Hey, how you doing? This is Tom, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show, and I got Rob here, the 741 channel.
Hello,
and
everyone.
We're going to talk about. Hey, how you doing? This. I got my back. Oh, hold on a second. Gee whiz, out of control.
That's all right. I had to do the same thing.
I got my back. Oh, hold on a second.
That's all right.
Oh gosh.
That's all right. I had to do the same thing.
There. Sorry about that. Always something, you know. Let me go back to. There we go. Yeah, we're going to start talking about, and maybe if you have questions on other subjects, that's okay. We're going to talk about radio prices. Back when, 1980, for instance, and today, and have prices gone comparatively? Have they gone up or they have gone down? So I've got a little slideshow here. See if I can get it up. Have they gone up? That was you, Rob. That was
Yeah. I had to reset something over here.
That wasn't me.
Things got unsynchronized here, so I apologize for that.
Okay, I better put this slide up. Here we go.
Put the slide up before anything else goes wrong.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, let me go to the first. Come on. There we go. That's this. Okay, we're going to talk about radio prices. And here's some things to keep in mind. We're not professionals in making YouTube videos.
As you can tell.
Yeah. We are not radio experts by any means. Take everything we say and check it out for yourself. And if you have corrections, please post them in the comments so everybody can see it. And we're going to start the show. Here we go. So, radio prices 1980 versus today, 2021. Now, here's a slide where I show you radio prices today, radios you can get today. Now, most of these prices came from Amazon. So, for instance, the little Texan PL-380 only cost you $50 today. The Eaton, or the Grundig, as it used to be called, the 750 is $399. Now, I got one about 5 years ago, and it was about $239 at that time. So
it's
that is gone. Yeah. Another one is the Texan PL-680. You can get that for $150. The CC Crane Skywave, another little radio, you can get that for $90. The brand new Texan PL-990 is $270.
And I would think that'll come down a little bit over time.
Well, it has come down.
Yeah.
It was first on Amazon for $1,200. And then it showed up on a couple other places. It was like just under $400. And now it's under $300. So I don't know if it's going to come down much more.
Okay.
The Eaton Elite Traveler, the little pocket radio, is $49. And the new Sangean ATS-909X2 is $287. Again, it started a couple of months ago being advertised at over $1,000. It's now dropped down to $287 on Amazon and maybe even cheaper on some other sites.
Interesting. Okay, so that's current state. That's what we got now. So if you wanted a shortwave all band radio, these are your kind of most popular choices, and this is about what you'd pay. Makes sense.
Okay, now we'll look at radio prices back in 1980. Now, this is kind of what I showed you in a previous show, and I got these from the Radio Shack catalog, 1980. And what I did here is under cost, I have the cost in the catalog and what the equivalent cost in dollars that would be today.
Okay. So the first number over there is what the original price would have been, and the second number is today's equivalent adjusted for inflation or whatever, right?
Right.
Okay.
It's not what you'd have to pay for a used one. It's what the equivalent price is in today's dollars.
Okay. Got it.
So, like for instance, a Radio Shack Patrolman CB60, which had AM, FM, shortwave, and the CB band, cost $100 back then. That's equivalent dollars of 317 today. That's due to inflation. Realistic DX160, very popular one. Back then, I have one of those. It cost $180. If you were to buy it with today's dollars, $570.
Wow.
The realistic DX300 was $380 back then. Now, equivalent dollars is $1,203.
Wow.
Then this is what we're talking about. Do these numbers make sense or what? Another very popular radio back then is the Sangean ATS-803A. $189 would cost in today's dollars $600. I think you have one of those, Rob.
Yeah, I've got the DX440, which is the same thing. I didn't realize they were that old, though. Like you could get them in 1980.
Yeah.
Okay. So that radio's been around a while then.
Yeah. Two more that typically ham radio operators got. These are receivers only. And I have both. I have one of these. I have the ICOM 71A. $869 back then, which is equivalent to almost $3,000.
Yeah. You can buy, I think you can buy a pretty nice transceiver for that money now.
You could buy.
You can get the Flex radio for that. I think the nice Flex, SDR ham radio, or you can get the what is it? Well, you definitely can get a 7300 ICOM, but you could probably even get whatever the next one up is for that price, the 7610. If you got a sale, you could probably get it for close to that.
Yeah,
so that's incredible.
And they've got all kinds of bells and whistles on the radios you're talking about, and they're typically, I'm trying to remember, maybe $1,200 today.
Yeah, the 7300, which seems to be like the current standard HF radio that everybody's buying. You can get it, if you wait for a sale, you can get it right around $1,000.
Okay.
And that radio does everything except make you breakfast. Not that the R71 is a bad radio, but when you compare the two, they're just in a different category.
Yeah, and a couple of things about those newer radios today, such as the one you mentioned, is many of them are computer controlled, and that gives you all kinds of features and functions and options that weren't even thought of back there when the ICOM 71 came out.
Yeah. And that's just a receiver.
Right.
The modern one is a transceiver. You can transmit with it too. So.
And then finally, another example is the Kenwood R5000. Again, it was about $850 back in 1980, which is equivalent to $26.95 in today's dollars. I mean, I as Rob was saying about some of the radios you can get today, I don't know too many that are up in that high cost. I'm talking about receiver only.
Well, Kenwoods are always a little higher priced than other stuff, but they're usually good quality. But yeah, that's a lot of money for that radio. And same thing. The R5000 back in the day was very similar to the TS440 radio, which I have one back here, which is a transceiver. It's got a built-in antenna tuner. I don't know, it's not on your list. I wonder what that would have cost new in 1980. But if the R5000 was $850, which is the equivalent of $2,700 now, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder. I think that's the last. Now I have one more slide, and that's checking eBay prices this morning on some of those same radios. So this is what's going to cost you for a used one on eBay. Now these numbers here, as far as the eBay cost, is the starting price, starting bid price.
Yeah, that's not necessarily what it's selling for, right?
Right.
So again, the first column here you're showing is the original used, or not the original used, the original price from 1980.
Right.
And then the second column is what you saw it on eBay for.
This morning, yeah.
Yeah.
And there were several of them, and I just picked one that had a description that indicated it's in good shape. None of these fix them up ones. And you go down here, like the DX160, which is a very popular radio. It's pretty close to the cost back in 1980, which of course we said escalated to today's dollars is much higher. So it's kind of held its 1980 price, so I say.
Yeah, that's and this is an interesting table. It's kind of interesting that you've dug into this over the last couple of days and kind of, figured all these numbers out, because when you stop and think about it, say like the DX160, for example, since that's what we're sort of talking about. So let's say that on eBay it sells for 160 or 180. It's a nice old classic radio. Those work well, no problem. But when you put it on the table and set it side by side next to like a Texan PL680 or any of the radios on the list today that are available for about that same price, the new radio is going to blow it away in terms of features and probably performance too. I would think for the most part, the newer radios are going to perform better too. So you got to stop and think about what you're paying for, I guess. If you're looking for a radio to use and you want performance and things like that, based on the research you've done here, Tom, it just seems like you should go for the new one. But if you're looking for nostalgia, you're a collector, you're into the older stuff, kind of like I am a little bit, then you got to look at it and say, well, gee, am I willing to pay that much money for it, I guess.
Yeah, and again, not knowing whether it's in perfect shape or not compared to a brand new one.
That's the other variable too. You don't know. There's pictures and everything, but you really don't know what you're getting.
Yeah, especially a radio that's quite old, components start aging and failing and stuff like that. And I actually asked Jeff, who loans me radios, I asked him if he had any of these old radios that he had sent to the shop and had it not upgraded, but brought up to snuff, new caps and stuff like that. And what I wanted to do is take one of those old radios, just pick one here, say the Sangean ATS-803A, and with it, tuned up, I'll say, and compare it to like a PL660, so that I would have a radio that I knew had been gone over and was working at its best performance like it was when it was new, and compare it to a brand new radio. So I'm hoping he has something like that. We could do a show on that.
that would be interesting because I'd be curious to know. So like you said, if you take the Sangean 803, you buy one, say you buy it for 150, the eBay price there, so you get it for that. And then yeah, you have it restored by somebody professionally that does that, or even if you do it yourself, I guess. How much are you going to spend in parts? But let's say you have it done, by somebody that does that. What's the total price, and how does that compare to the last slide that you have with the adjusted for today's dollars number, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you're probably going to be close to that, where by the time you get one fully restored and brought to factory specs, it's you're going to be paying that adjusted for inflation number, and then you got to compare that to what you can buy off the shelf from Amazon. This is an interesting study.
Yeah, and my point of view, originally, like when these new radios came out, such as the new Sangean and the new Texan, and the prices were very high, and that's normal. But then they came down, but they're still pretty high. They're like $300. And is that out of line with what radios cost, back in 1980, or is it less expensive and you're getting more?
Yeah. And if you asked me that question Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever it was before you released that video that you released earlier in the week, I would have said, yeah, the prices are kind of high on some of these radios. Doesn't seem worth it. But now that you've actually done this research and broken it down and kind of showed it here on the screen, I'd have to say, maybe they're not quite as expensive as we think. It's comparing everything together. It's not a bad value, actually, in some cases. There are some differences, obviously. The radios now, for the most part, work better, but the operating experience is a little bit different than the old ones. There's something to be said for the big knobs and dials and switches and just kind of the experience of that. But I just think the performance and the technology kind of outweighs most of that on the new stuff.
Now, the one thing that does trouble me with these newer radios is their quality.
Good point.
I've seen reviews on some of these newer radios, and one person thinks it's the greatest radio since sliced bread, and another person will say, it's got this problem and that problem and this problem. And I think, this is just my personal opinion, I think it's a quality control problem.
Or lack of quality control. They probably don't have a quality controlled, really. And that's part of the reason why they're relatively so cheap, probably, because they're skipping that step in the process. They don't have to pay somebody to do it. They don't have to have the test equipment, whatever. They just let the customer be the quality control. But you're right. You can get some variation in that. And it's questionable. And actually, I was looking in the chat. Radio Geek kind of said the same thing in the chat as you did at the same time about the quality. And even the assembly quality of the radio or whatever, even the quality of the components inside. I would argue that maybe with the exception of electrolytic capacitors, the quality of the parts in the older radios is arguably better in a lot of cases than it is in the newer stuff. Although in the newer stuff, you've got the surface mount technology, the parts, even though they're lesser quality, they may actually be, I don't want to say more robust, but less susceptible to issues just because they're smaller and the way that they're made nowadays is different, especially things like electrolytic capacitors. I think those have improved over time in terms of their quality, but knobs, switches, mechanical parts like that, not so much. I think the old ones were probably better.
And then another thing that's really different between old and new is size.
Right.
really, you're getting a whole bunch of stuff in a much smaller package. And that's something that could be an issue for certain people who just don't have the room. I'm looking at my old Collins 75A-4. That thing weighs about 40 to 60 pounds.
Yeah.
It's about 2 foot by 1.5 feet on the face. It just takes up a lot of room.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to move that today, I couldn't even move it. It's too heavy. Where,
That's a good too.
Something like this, which will run rings around that radio, basically you can take it anywhere you want to.
Yeah, you can put it in your pack and take it on a plane if you want to, or whatever kind of a thing. And that's a good point too. The modern stuff. Sometimes you're trading, some of that stuff for the convenience. So you look at the PL660, PL680. That's got all kinds of memory frequencies and all kinds of like stuff like that you couldn't dream of doing with a radio like a Collins or even some of the radios on this list. They didn't have memory functions or any of that sort of thing. So you got to look at that too. You're getting all these features that just weren't there back in the day. Let's see. Mark Carter is in there. Good morning. He says caps were out for sure, but once swapped out, you have a decent radio on your hands. Yeah, generally speaking, you can go through a radio. The capacitors are usually a problem, but I've got a friend that restores radios from time to time, and he's even seen resistors go out of tolerance. So it's, it could, when you get an old radio, you don't know what to expect. You can probably count on the caps being out, but there could be other parts too, I guess.
Yeah, and the Radio Geek says today you have one IC that does the work of hundreds of parts in all those radios. So you got less components to fail.
Yeah, that's a good point too. There's just so much, put into an IC nowadays, and it gives you all that power too. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing to kind of just sit here and look at this and see sort of how the technology has evolved, and then sort of kind of debate it. Because you can't argue with that, but at the same time, there's just something about using an old radio that's just cool. What we need is one of these modern radios that has all these bells and whistles with all the modern functions, but put it in a box like this with a bunch of knobs and switches on it. And then we'll have the best of both worlds. Let's see. Norm is in there this morning. W1NLJ. I was just talking to him on the repeater yesterday. We hadn't talked for a while, so it was good to catch up with Norm. And then we got Mike McManus in there. Where can you get modern shortwave radios repaired, such as a PL380? I don't know. What do you think, Tom? Have you ever heard of anybody repairing one?
Well, in Florida, there is a couple of people that repair these radios. Jeff King, who loans me radios, he gets these used radios, and he has a shop. I think it's called the Florida Repairman or something like that. And it typically, to go through a radio and recap it and realign it, it's about $100 a radio.
Okay.
So it's not cheap, but it does exist. There's another one just south of me in Florida. I see him advertise on Facebook. I don't know what he charges.
I know here in Connecticut, we have the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum of Connecticut, and there's a few guys there that restore radios, but I think they're focused mostly on the older stuff. I don't know that they'd repair any new stuff, but you never know. But that brings up another point in my mind. When you're looking at the repair of a modern radio versus an older one, like we were talking about You look at an older radio and some of the parts may have failed, capacitors, whatever. A modern radio, if it goes bad, most of the time, it's probably a bad solder joint. It's probably not a bad part. It's probably a manufacturing defect on the circuit board. So it's probably almost easier to fix if you're able to solder the fine pitch surface mount stuff and find the problem in the first place. So I've seen some of that in the stuff I've tinkered with. A lot of its parts are fine, just for whatever reason, a solder joint went bad.
And of course, there's the problem of finding the part.
Yeah.
That's, especially some of these specialized integrated circuits and stuff like that, you may not have access to them at all.
Right. Actually, that is true on the newer stuff. If you can get a schematic, you may not be able to identify the parts because in some cases they've intentionally removed the marking from the parts so that you don't know what it is on purpose. It's a way for them to kind of protect what the thing is, I guess. I've seen a little bit of that. I don't know if in the radio stuff they do that, but I know in the computer world and things like that, they kind of do that to hide the technology, and they don't release the schematics. So you almost have to kind of know what you're looking at if you want to repair one of those, or just like I said, be able to look for a bad solder joint or something like that. I know one of the reasons that causes that is the new lead-free manufacturing of circuit boards these days. The lead-free solder and the lead-free finishes on the boards are just more brittle, more susceptible to cracking. So if you can just find it visually, you might be able to fix it. But if you have to trace out a circuit, it might be difficult.
Now, Rob, you might know more about this. I don't quite understand what's going on, but I'm seeing on the news there's a shortage of semiconductors in Texas because of the storm. I don't understand that.
I didn't hear about that, although it makes sense. But I know that there was another shortage because some factory in China shut down that was making a bunch of microcircuit, different types of little microcircuits. So I was reading an article the other day that the Ford F-150 line was shut down because they couldn't get a chip to put in the infotainment system that's in that truck. And that's really all that was holding it up, kind of a thing, because this factory went offline. I don't know if there was a fire or if it just shut down or what it was, but they were the only ones that made certain kinds of chips, and I don't remember what they were. But I know some stuff is still made down in Texas. Not a lot, but I would think it would be more, high-end military type stuff or real high-end type, ICs. And I would think that, if the storms were down there and power was out, those companies would have had to have shut down. So,
okay. The other thing we want to do is we're going to switch over to Rob, and he's going to show us some live prices on eBay. So let me close my screen, stop sharing here. And if you can share your screen, Rob.
Sure. Give me a second here.
Okay. While Rob's doing that, we're testing out StreamYard. I used StreamYard several years back. This is for streaming on YouTube, and I ran into a problem, and I thought, well, let me see if they fix things because they have made several changes. So we're trying StreamYard this time. Rob and I are always looking for a program or whatever to stream on YouTube, and we haven't found the perfect one yet. But this one looks promising. Okay, Rob. Go ahead.
Looks pretty good. Are you seeing my screen?
No.
Okay.
I just said this was working great, and
yeah, it says that I'm sharing, but I don't.
I see. Okay, there's an option down here.
There you go. Now
there we go.
You had to give me permission, probably. All right, so we're fumbling around a little bit. That's okay though. I don't think anybody minds too much. All
Yeah,
right.
like,
So, oh,
like
go
I
ahead.
said, like I said, we're just trying StreamYard for about the first time in many years.
Yeah, and I've never really used it. Tom used it a few times. I was on his show, but I've never used it myself. So this is new for me. Anyway, I've just for the fun of it right here, I've got the DX300 on the first tab, and here's some prices. So here's one comes with the original box, $350. Says it's tested, so that's good. A lot of times you see these eBay ads and they say not able to test or whatever.
Or yeah, not able to test. That blows my mind.
Now, so $350, you can buy it now, but then you got to pay $35 for shipping, at least to my location.
Yep.
That's it. Is there more of a description? No, just more stuff. So that's the, oh, here's some pictures. So there's the 300. These were good radios. Don't get me wrong. These are nice radios. They're fun to use, but I don't know. I wouldn't pay more than maybe $50 for something like that if I was in the market for it, but I'm a cheapskate. So,
Yeah.
you know, these are the types of things I used to pick up at ham fests, and I kind of miss going to ham fests because you can't find this stuff now. And maybe that's part of the reason why the prices on eBay are so high right now is because this is the only place where you can get this stuff.
That's an excellent point.
So I wonder if as things start to ease up and we can start having ham fests and flea markets again, maybe these prices will start to come down a little bit. Okay, so here's the DX440. This is similar to the ATS 803 Sangean radio. And this is the one I have. This is why I looked it up. But you can see these are starting. Oh, okay. So this one's parts only, $25. Parts or repair, $40.
You got to watch that. Yeah.
Yeah. You should see my parts radio. It doesn't look like that. Here's another one, $15. Let's see. Why is, oh, that's, I thought that was just a clip. Why are these so cheap? Okay. So maybe we found an anomaly here. Only $6 shipping from
that's a part, I think.
Oh, yeah. That's just okay. Well, let's see. Here's an $85 one working. It's got the shoulder strap. This looks like your average DX440 that's been around for a while. A little bit of corrosion in the battery terminals there. But probably an okay radio. But again, you got to take this with a grain of salt. Unit works great with power adapter. Does it really? $85. Ooh, free shipping. So maybe that's not a bad deal. Maybe that's the deal of the day. The DX440. Here's a parts radio. I don't know if it says what's wrong with it. Is there more of a description? Here we go. Direct entry, parts or repair not working. Thanks for looking. I was told the unit doesn't work. Selling for a friend. Yeah. You always have to question that too. But there you go. Cosmetically, it's okay. But he says it's not working. Well, there you go. There's a deal. I know how to fix those, so maybe I should buy it and flip it and sell it for $300.
Sell it to me.
Yeah, right. Here's the Patrolman 60. This was one of the radios on your list.
Yeah, the second one there is the one I priced.
Yeah, what's this first one? $40 or best offer. Well, this one comes with the box. Portable radio. New. This says it's new old stock.
Yeah, that's why I grabbed it.
So that would be equivalent of buying a new radio that probably wasn't really ever used, or maybe it was a demo in a store or something like that. So $150 plus $35 shipping from Arizona.
And that was $100 back in 1980.
Yeah. So now it's 150 for a new old stock with the box. So I don't know. I don't have the chat up because I'm doing this, but would you guys pay that much for a radio like that? Or how about the $40? Great shape, tested, works, read. So here's a $40 one. It looks a little rough. You can see, it's got some mold and mildew on the knobs there. So it's probably been sitting in a garage or a basement for a while. But it looks all there. $40 with $14 shipping from Michigan. I don't know. Would you take a chance on that?
Mark says no.
Mark says no. Let's see. Great shape, tested and works. AM and FM only.
Ah,
Antennas are fine and retract fine. Tested with cord only. I did not test with batteries. So when I read something like this, it makes me think that the person really kind of did test it. I feel like that's honest.
yeah, he sounds like he's giving you facts.
So I'd feel comfortable with that. Will be shipped carefully in a box. So there you go.
So
What do you think? Would you take a chance on something like that?
I think I would. I think the fact that he told you some details gives you more of a warm feeling, and that you'll know what you're getting.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody putting something out and saying not tested. I was like, what does it take to test it? You plug it in.
Yeah, I know.
What are you hiding? So that's some examples of used equipment versus buying something brand new. Now, for instance, if you go back to the other one,
The 440?
Yeah. So there was one there for $85.
This one.
So say, for instance, that everything's working good and there's no problems or anything. So it's $85. Now, what could you get brand new, guaranteed for $85? Say
Was it the what does the 330 go for?
330 is a $60. So you can get a 330.
Yeah.
And
330, which does everything this radio does, doesn't it?
And more. I don't think that one, I don't know. I don't think that one has single sideband.
Yeah, the 440 has sideband.
Oh, okay. But you got, like you said before, you got memories, you got auto tuning, you got multiple filters, and so
yeah,
I don't know. I think I would have come to the conclusion these new radios are not really that expensive.
No, especially something like this. So the way I would put it, if I was shopping for a new radio, well, obviously new radio, if I needed a radio that I wanted it to work, I would get this. I would get a new radio.
Yeah.
But if I were at a flea market and I was in the mood to buy something used to play with, then, I don't know if I'd pay $85 for one of these, but
No.
But the $40, I might go for 40 on something like this, maybe. If if I was in the mood to get something like that and clean it up and have a nostalgic radio, I'd be okay with that. But I also know that, this is a better radio. So, but it's interesting when you start thinking about, value for the money. It's hard to beat this new stuff. It really is.
Yeah, that's been my conclusion, is even though, say 2 weeks ago, I thought these new radios were way overpriced. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're priced about right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I was sort of thinking the same thing, that, especially like the 990, the coming out, and it's kind of a high price. It's like, well, I don't know, but yeah, if you stop and think about it, it may be a little high price because it's new, but I think it's still a decent value compared to what we were paying in 1980. When you factor in inflation and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I certainly couldn't, afford for instance, an ICOM R71 for almost $900 back in 1980. But
I'd still have a hard time paying for a $900 radio these days.
yeah,
I bought this radio, this ICOM 746. I bought that in 2008, and that was a refurbished unit. It wasn't even brand new, and I had to save up quite a while to afford that. So yeah, it's it's an investment. It really is.
Yep. Okay, let's wrap this up. Let's check the chat, see if there's any new things coming up.
Let's see. What do we got? I lost track of where we were. Boy, there was a lot going on. I know.
Yeah.
I see 2 screens now. eBay. I lost track. I apologize.
Okay, let's just start at the Radio Geek at 826. Says you can get a better deal at a Hamfest. Yep, that's what Rob was saying. But fortunately, right now, most Hamfests are shut down.
There's just a general flea market here in Eastern Connecticut that happens every Sunday in the summer, and we used to go to that from time to time. I could find some good radio deals there because a lot of it was people just coming in. They're cleaning out their cellar. And they come in, they pay $5 and they set up a table. And, they're not radio collectors. They're just junk collectors. They're trying to clear their junk out. So I've gotten really good deals on radio stuff there. And I miss that because they haven't been able to have that flea market since everything started. But maybe this summer, who knows?
Just before that, Dan says he got the PL 990X a few weeks ago. Beautiful radio.
Good to hear.
Yeah. I know the initial ones that came out had some problems, and then they finally released a couple of weeks ago the production models, and a lot of those problems have been fixed and they're gone. Okay. Then let's see. Mark says, nice, Dan, referring to the Hamfest. Did you have a firmware update?
Okay. Oh, on the 990. Okay.
Yep. And then
that's what he said. There were a few issues updating the firmware, sending those out, second wave radios. Okay.
Okay, then we got
D808 $70, no contest.
Yeah.
Is that a X Data 808? D808?
Yeah. Yep.
I haven't heard of that one.
I did a review of that one because I got a loaner from Jeff.
Oh, okay.
And I had some problems. And then I saw a bunch of videos recently on them, and those people didn't have problems. So I'm thinking maybe it was the environment that I tested it in, which is, I think, either my office, which has got tons of RF noise, or even my workshop's got a lot of RF noise. So I'm planning on doing another show on that outside, away from all this RF noise.
Interesting. Okay.
James Johnson says, I have this Sangean radio that you could do a update by taking out the batteries, and there's a USB port under where the batteries go. I didn't know that.
Sneaky. There you go. Well, that'll give you something to look at later. Let's see. Still buy the 990 in a few months.
Yeah, hopefully I have the H-501 that's coming in a couple of months once they start shipping the production models.
I'm still interested in that Malachite SDR radio. That looks real interesting to me. Right now, it's kind of iffy on which one you're buying, whether you're getting a good one or a bad one. So I've kind of held off. But plus, I got other things going on. But at some point, I'd like to get a hold of one of those and play around with it. But make sure I get the good one, the Russian version or whatever.
Russian, yeah. The
Yeah.
Russian version is over $250.
Yeah. I imagine the price will come down a little bit and maybe get into a more solid distribution
Right.
setup, and then maybe I'll pick one up, but probably not right now. But I do have my eye on it. It's an interesting technology, especially, I like the older gear here. Everybody knows that, but I like the new stuff too, and that one's interesting.
Okay, what else do we have?
Ingmar says, good comparison, gives new views to prices in general. I agree that, Tom's been doing this research for the last week or so, and it's really opened my eyes. It made me kind of look at this a little differently. Let's see. I think I read somewhere the 746 Pro was a great receiver for just listening to shortwave and ham radio operators. It definitely is, Kevin. Like I said, I've had this radio. I got it in 2008. And when I was researching radios back then, one of the reasons I got it was because it had one of the better rated receivers for the price point back then. And I'd be hard pressed to get rid of this radio. I've had trouble with it over the years too. When I first got it, I had to send it out to have the transmit issue fixed. And then the same problem happened again, and I had to send it out again. I wasn't up to speed on a surface mount repair back then, so I had to have it fixed twice. But then the backlight went out, and I was able to fix that myself, and a couple of other little things. But it's all debugged now, and it works great. I really like that radio for a lot of reasons.
Okay, Mark Carter made an interesting comment. He says the X-Data 808 really works well outdoors. And I think that was why I didn't have very good reception, because I was indoors. A lot of, I get the router and I had 6 computers running, this was killing it.
Yeah, that'll do it. So yeah, take it outside and see what you can do. Let's see. So somebody's asking if you know what kind of materials are used to block RF. There's there's a few different strategies that you can do, I guess, depending on where the RF is coming from and that kind of a thing. Sometimes it's tough when you're trying to use a portable radio in a room like this where you've got the fluorescent lights and things, because it's just going to radiate into the radio and there's not much you can do. But if you've got an antenna connected up with coax, sometimes that'll help, where you're pulling in the signal. The antenna's a little further away from everything that's generating the RF, so you can get a cleaner signal. But then you can play around with balun and toroids and chokes and things like that to kind of help too. But the best solution is to get outside away from that. That's what I've found, actually, with these portable type radios.
That's one of the shortcomings of some of these portable radios, is they don't have an external antenna jack. Now, like, for instance, this one has an external antenna jack. And so as Rob was talking about, the key thing to receive good shortwave on a radio like this is to use that antenna jack and bring in an outside antenna through coax, shielded coax, so all the RF noise in the room doesn't get on the antenna. That's the exact thing I did wrong when I tested that 808, is it didn't have an external jack, so I just attached an antenna to the telescopic antenna, and there was no shielding. So the antenna was in the room with me, picking up all the RF noise. So it made it worse. So that kind of radio, like Rob said, you got to go outside.
Sometimes you can get away with using like a coupling loop or something where you might have your external antenna coming from the outside, and in your shack, you plug it into a loop antenna and then put that next to the portable radio. And sometimes the signal will be strong enough to overwhelm the noise. I've seen people do that. But that's still kind of iffy because you're still able to pick up the noise too. But it's something some people have tried, I guess, the coupling loops. Have you done any of those, Tom?
No.
I haven't either. I haven't tried it, but I've seen other people do it with some success. I know here at my place for the ham stuff, when I first moved into this house, I put up a 160 meter dipole. We got plenty of room here. And the feed point was right up at the peak of the roof, right up above me here. And the legs went out into the yard. And I was excited because I live in the middle of the woods here. There's hardly any neighbors, nothing going on. I turned on my radios and I had S9 noise across the band. Long story short, I found out my kitchen appliances are radiating all kinds of noise. So what I ended up having to do was move my antenna 100 feet away from the house and run coax out to it. And now it's fine. I can still hear a little tiny bit of noise once in a while on certain frequencies from stuff, but for the most part, it's cleared up. But not everybody can do that.
We got a comment from Generation. Do you know what is a software-defined serial radio? The only thing I can think as you're talking about, I have an old ICOM SDR. I mean, it's really old. It's one of the first SDRs. And you connected to it, the little box, about that big, via RS-232 serial port. Maybe that's what you're talking about.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I think...
Oh, go ahead.
I think some of the other ICOM radios that you could, standalone radios that also could be controlled a little bit by software used a serial port, which was fashionable back 15, 20 years ago.
I remember coming across, and I should look this up again. I'm not going to do it now, but 20, maybe even more years ago at a ham fest, I came across something like what you're talking about. I don't remember who made it, but I remember the model number. It was an RZ1. And I remember that because that's my initials. And I wanted to buy it just because it was my initials. But it was some kind of radio like you're talking about. But it looked interesting technology at the time. But I remember the guy wanted tons and tons of money for it back then, because that was all brand new technology. So I never bought it. But I can't remember who made it. But same idea. Serial port connection, computer controlled. But I think it might have been an analog radio. Maybe it was an SDR. I'm not sure. Let's see. The statement sums it up. Why the new portables are so great. You can take them to the local woods, electric free. They become a very different unit. Yeah, I mean, you could with the old ones too. They were just bulkier and bigger, and didn't work quite as good in the field as the new ones do, at least from what I've seen. I've taken my PL660 out. Like anytime I go on a trip, I bring that with me most of the time, and I've had excellent results with it. From camping in the woods to sitting on a beach. It works good.
Okay, I think we're caught up, and we're almost up to an hour, so I think it's time to wrap it up. Unless somebody else has any other questions or comments.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably good to cut it here. Great show, Tom. Great topic. I want to explore this more. I think it's very interesting. Kind of what you've come up with here and kind of pointed out. Radios, the new radios on the market, while they seem a little bit expensive, I think they're a good value.
Yeah, especially if you're in the market for a new radio, so you just got into the hobby, and you got like a used radio or a hand-me-down or something like that, and you're looking for a little better radio. Some of these radios are a pretty good buy right now, believe it or not.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks, Rob, for helping me out with this show. We typically, Rob and I, try to do a show similar to this once a month because of our schedules. We can't really schedule them too far in advance. I'm really bad about just doing them at the spur of the moment. Rob is pretty good at scheduling it at least a day or two ahead of time. But I really enjoy these shows. I love the interface with the listeners. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, I agree. I like doing the shows with you, Tom. We've always got interesting topics, and people out there in the chat come in and kind of spice up the conversation. So it's always a fun thing to do. I wish I could commit to planning a regular schedule of these things at a certain time, but it's just hard with everything going on that everyone has to do all the time. But yeah, maybe we'll do another one later in March. We'll get the other two guys in and do another radio roundtable in a couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that. Like I said, we won't plan it just in case, but you may see that in a couple of weeks. And if you have any suggestions for topics that you'd like us to talk about on that show, drop a comment here and let us know.
Okay, we have one more comment from Kevin. I think, Rob, you can probably answer that better than I can.
Okay, Kevin says, what's a good coax cable I can use to run outdoors to a long wire antenna? Generally, if you are trying to listen to shortwave or under 30 megahertz, I've had pretty good luck with RG8X coax. At those frequencies, it's not too lossy, and it's easy to work with because it's nice thin diameter and it's relatively inexpensive. You can buy it fairly cheaply. You can get better coax that will give you a little bit better performance. And if you're setting up a ham radio station where you're going to transmit, you may want to consider something a little better. But RG8X is a fine coax for HF. But for receiving, I would think it would be fine. Seems to be the best bang for the buck. Like I said, there's better coax if you want to spend the money. Some of it's a little thicker and a little harder to work with, like the LMR 400 variants, or the RG213 is similar. It's a little thicker, a little higher performance, less loss, but more expensive. So I don't know if they still have it on their website, because I know they're sort of in the process of slowly going out of business. But Universal Radio had a good coax comparison chart on their website, and you could see the different losses for all the different types of coax. And you could even buy coax from them. Maybe they still sell it, but there's resources on the web that you can kind of look at that'll help you make the decision. But I think if I were setting up an antenna for just receiving only, I'd probably go with the 8X for, bang for the buck. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think you made a very interesting point about that website that's going out of business. Is I would suggest that you go to their website, bring up those charts, and do a screen capture. Because if they go out of business, those charts are going to go away, and they are excellent comparison charts.
There are other charts out there, but theirs was the easiest to read.
Yeah.
For just getting a quick snapshot of what's going on. That's a good point. I'll have to do that later because I like that chart.
Yeah, I do too. Matter of fact, I've used it on a couple of my shows.
I know you.
Okay, I think we're all caught up, and it's time to wrap it up. Thank everybody for stopping by who watched our show live. And we are right at 1 hour, so that's perfect.
Perfect time. Okay. See you guys later. 7-3 to everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you again soon.
Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.